Shalom and welcome to the Middle East Report. In today's programme we'll be discussing the remarkable work being done by Magen David Adom in saving lives in Israel and how Christians can play their part. Warm welcome to the programme and my two special guests today. One is from Israel, the other one is from Western-super-Mare. And we have a special Israeli guest from Magen David Adom, who's a medic, and his name is Dror Wayne, together with the Reverend Mark Madeley, who is the president of Christian Friends of Magen David Adom UK. So welcome to the programme. I'll start off with you, Mark. So Mark, warm welcome back to the programme.
Thank you.
I'm sorry it's been a while since you've last been on the programme, but can you share with us how really that you're here to represent Christian Friends of Magen David Adom, but also remind myself and our viewers of how the Lord gave you a love for Israel and the Jewish people?
I first went to Israel way back in 1995, and ironically with a clergyman that absolutely hated Israel and cursed that we were even flying El Al. And we got toured around all these awful areas and told about the wickedness of Israel. And I came back and I thought something doesn't add up there. And I began to do some research in the scriptures and talk to other people, and eventually realised that actually it was not true. And the Lord began to educate me from then on. So that led me eventually to Christian Friends of Magen David Adom, because I spoke at a rally in Manchester. It was the time of the Hezbollah crisis, and there was a lot of anti-Semitism going on, and I went to the rally and said, look, I'm really, really sorry. Not all of us feel this way, and I want to apologise on behalf of the church. And that's what got me in, because somebody in the crowd said, well, put your money where your mouth is and start helping us with Magen David Adom.
Well, you have done that very well.
I've done my best, yes.
But also, you're one of these rare Anglicans as well, a Reverend, part of the Church of England that has sound doctrine when it comes to Israel and the Jewish people, and there's not many of you, Mark. So share with us and talk about your Anglican church up in Western-super-Mare and Somerset, and any of our viewers who are in that area that are looking for a Bible-believing church that loves Israel. Can't recommend your church highly enough.
Thanks, Simon. Yes, St Nicholas Uphill is where we are, which is the southern end of Western-super-Mare. I've always been quite strong on scripture, and so I always introduce myself as Bible-believing end of the Church of England. But I'm fortunate where I am, because when I arrived, there'd been some good foundation work done by my predecessor, and I've been able to build on that and gradually teach people more and more about Israel. And the Lord's just blessing us left, right and centre. It's fantastic at the moment. We're in a real growth spurt in many, many ways. And my church warden said to me the other day, I see now why you've said all you will ever do is preach scripture and let the Lord do the rest. And I said, yeah, precisely. That's the answer, isn't it? So, yeah, we're really enjoying it, and we love having people come and spend time with us and share with us. Fantastic,
thank you. And Dror, warm welcome to the programme. I mean, you've made that brave step of making Aliyah, but can you just share with us your Jewish life growing up in North London and the reason why you and your family decided to make Aliyah to Israel, and how you got involved with the work of Magen David Adom?
Thanks very much for having me here. It's a real pleasure. There were quite a few parts to that question. I hope I get to them all. So, starting with my growing up in the Jewish community in London, a love for Israel was always a part of my education, both at home, at school, in the community. As you can imagine, it's very important for us as Jews all across the world, as it has been throughout the years. And with that came also an education of the Judeo-Christian value of giving and supporting others and helping others, and always using whatever resources we have in our availability to help others, whatever skills and whatever we may learn. So Magen David Adom was a real natural step when I got to Israel. But going back, you asked why we made Aliyah, why me and my parents and my whole family moved to Israel. I think it was a combination of factors. Israel is where, on a personal level, I always felt I was meant to be. It is, as much as I'm grateful for everything I received from being in Britain, I was incredibly grateful that I could, as a Jew, live in the UK, and there are many people supporting and protecting my rights here, I felt that I could be with my people and help them and contribute to this wonderful country that is Israel, through Magen David Adom, but also through, as you said, putting your money where your mouth is. And I'd always prayed for returning to Israel, so this was my opportunity to do it.
Amazing. And Mark, can you share with our viewers the story of how Christian Friends of Magen David Adom began, and also the work you've done really since 2006 in reaching out to Israel and the Jewish community, particularly the incredible work being done by Israel's National Ambulance Service, which is MDA?
Yeah, we started, as you say, in 2006 with that speech, and gradually we kind of networked amongst various churches, trying to find churches that loved Israel and saying to them, primarily we need your prayers, but secondly, if you'd like to make a contribution, then the Lord will bless that and we'll be able to use it for Magen David Adom. And gradually numbers just grew and grew and grew from various parts of the church community, obviously not just the Church of England. And it's been a great witness actually to us, never mind anybody else, to see how the Lord has multiplied those gifts. And in fact, someone said to me the other day, it's amazing with you Christians because you don't give an entire ambulance out of one family, but all these £25 and £10 that come in from viewers of this programme and elsewhere really do add up. So over the years, from memory, I think it's 8 ambulances we've given, 4 medicycles. We refurbished the emergency room at Kiryat Shmona in the north of Israel, and we're currently raising money towards the Tiberias ambulance station, which is a special one for us because that's where our first ambulance was dedicated back in 2008. And we're still going strong, and that's not to mention the blood centre, because I think we're going to talk about that later.
Absolutely, that's incredible. But we also have to mention the very special Barbara Dingle as well. And the work
Indeed, Barbara is fantastic. She's a great support to myself and many others, and she's extremely useful in networking and getting us into places we wouldn't otherwise do. So I love Barbara to bits.
Absolutely, she helps me with guests as well. So Barbara, thank you so much if you're watching. And Dror, can you just give us the remit of the organisation that is Magen David Adom, or MDA, and the UK has its own branch called MDA UK that looks to raise funds and support for the work of MDA in Israel. So, but it's not only a question of saving lives in Israel, is it? It's also essential for Israel's national security as well.
You're absolutely right. So in Israel, Magen David Adom, and around the world, Magen David Adom plays a variety of roles. We're the National Red Cross Society, and that comes with many implications, such as when we send aid delegations across the world, whether it's to educate first responders in countries or actually provide aid. I know recently you had on the show one of our paramedics who went to the Ukraine as soon as the opportunity arose to help people there. Within Israel, we are the National Ambulance Service. When you call the equivalent of dialing 999 in the UK, when you dial 101, it's Magen David Adom's dispatch centre that answers the call and dispatches all the first responders and ambulances. We also are responsible, as you've already mentioned, for the national blood supply. And that's the blood supply which is donated by Israelis across the country, collected at the new National Blood Centre and redistributed wherever it's needed, whether that's in hospitals to treat patients for all sorts of illnesses and injuries, whether that's to the IDF and soldiers who may be injured in their line of work, or anywhere else that it may be needed.
Excellent. So let's have a look now at the vital work being done by MDA, and this is called Help Save a Life.
Whether they're treating the victims of rocket attacks or heart attacks, the paramedics of Magen David Adom, Israel's paramedic and Red Cross service, are saving lives even when it means risking their own. Help save a life and support Magen David Adom today.
Short and sweet, very short but very sweet overview of the vital work being done by MDA in saving lives in Israel, as well as playing a major role for Israel's security. Mark, can you share with us how you have been involved since 2006 with Christian Friends of Israel, and you just shared with us that incredible response from our Christian viewers to this program and around the country to supporting the vital work being done in saving lives in Israel by MDA, but showing how this is also helping to rewrite a new chapter in Christian-Jewish relations, because we know that historically this hasn't been the case. But now there are so many Christians that love Israel, love the Jewish people, and want to show that practical love. And they've been showing that through the amazing work being done by Christian Friends of Magen David Adom.
Yeah, the funny thing was, when I was first approached to do it, I said, no, I'm not going to fundraise. That's not my job. I've never fundraised. And the Lord said, no, you are going to do it. You're going to speak, and I'm going to fundraise. And that's what actually has happened. All I've ever done is speak about my love of Israel and the Jewish people and how passionate I am about Magen David Adom's work. And it's because of that that then the money just comes in naturally. So I don't feel the need to go out and beg people for money, because when the Lord touches someone's heart, it comes. But my job has been very much in sort of promoting what Jewish-Christian relations, promoting the work of MDA, and just saying to people, look, what you hear on the BBC is not right. There is a completely different side. And actually what you hear in the majority of churches, is not right either. And somebody said to me the other day in my own church, it's amazing, since you came, it's like a light's gone on, and suddenly I understand everything in Scripture to do with Israel that never made sense before. So I think I shall continue doing that. I'm never going to ask for money. I'm quite happy to just say, look, this is what the Lord says. It's in Scripture. Don't argue with it. Take it on board and see what he does.
Absolutely, brilliant. And Dror, what does it mean to Israelis like yourself that have made Aliyah to Israel, that are living in Israel with the dangers and the threats, knowing that there's an ambulance being donated by Christian Friends of Israel to really help Israel during an hour of need and crisis?
I'll answer your question in just a moment, but I'm going to answer something more widely, more specifically than, more general than the Christian ambulances. Every time I start an ambulance shift and I go into an ambulance, that ambulance is donated by someone. Every time I walk into a station, that station is donated by someone or by a group of people. And in particular, knowing that there are Christians around the world, here in the UK and in many other countries, who are supporting us in whatever way they can. And it may be a £10 donation which goes towards an ambulance or which goes towards a piece of equipment. It may be their prayers, it may be their advocacy, it may be them telling someone else about the work that we're doing and why it's so important to support Magen David Adom. It fills my heart with a renewed sense of purpose. Sometimes you come to work and you think, God, it's another difficult day, isn't it? You're going to have a long shift ahead of you. But then you remember that not only are people depending on you, the people who are going to go and help during that shift, you remember that there are people standing behind you, people who have chosen to take time out of their day to fundraise, to pray, to donate, and it adds a new sense of meaning to what we do.
Amazing, amazing. So let's have a look at the overview of the ministry that is Christian Friends of Magen and David Adom, and how they are standing passionately with Israel and the Jewish people by supporting the vital emergency work being carried out by Magen David Adom.
Worldwide Christian
Israel today is fulfilling her biblical mandate as a light unto the nations. A leading example of this is the life-saving work of Magen David Adom. It's Israel's ambulance, blood services, and disaster relief organization, providing emergency rescue, paramedic services, and first responders to everyone in Israel, regardless of their faith or ethnicity.
Every man, every woman, every child is made in the image of God. Life is so valuable to God. It should be to us as well. Saving a life is about being our brother's keeper.
It's about choosing life rather than choosing death.
It's prayer in action.
We pray that you will support it and get behind it.
So we want to bless Israel in practical ways. And Magen David Adom is one of those organizations that deserves our support as Christians.
האוטו מחורר מכדורים. בפועל פינו את הילדים ליישוב סמוך. זה לגעת במהות של החיים בעצם באופן יומיומי.
אנחנו נחשפים לאנושות ברגעים הכי קשים שלה, ויש לנו את היכולת לתת יד ולעשות שינוי.
זה מה שאנחנו חיים, זה מה שאנחנו נושמים, וזה מה שאנחנו רואים מול העיניים. ככה אנחנו.
in Israel and internationally, Magen David Adom is first on the scene.
We are using the worldwide Christian community to save lives.
We are so happy to be a part of the team that do such a great job to give hope, to give life to people.
Through this van, we feel like we're part of this nation Israel, and I bless every team.
Without the partnership between you and Israel, there would be no future.
But now, such a huge group believes in Israel, believes in our existence here. It's great. Thank you very much.
We just love you, and you are very special.
This evening was amazing, seeing all those people celebrating and supporting the life-giving vehicles that they've provided funds for. Just a wonderful, uniting feeling of Jewish and Christian cooperation.
We just want to thank all of our friends in Singapore and Taiwan and all around the world for blessing Israel, for understanding that this is a responsibility, and by giving to Magen David Adom, you are doing that. We are very grateful.
This day means a lot to me because that the Jews walk not alone, that Jewish identity should be strong and high. Hashem oz v'yamo yitain, Hashem yivarech et hamo b'shalom.
And that is what makes Christian Friends of Magen David Adom so special, is showing that practical love and support for Israel and the Jewish people through their national emergency service that is MDA. Dror, we discussed how that you grew up in North London from a British Jewish community. You and your family made Aliyah, but you made Aliyah in 2020 at the height of the pandemic, COVID-19. Share with us what it was like to be in Israel during that time, but also to work for MDA during that pretty awful and severe lockdown that Israel had through 2020, almost into 2022.
Well, as I'm sure you can imagine, MDA played a crucial part in Israel's response to the pandemic. As the one real national medical service, we filled a lot of the roles in Israel that the NHS filled in the UK. And just like the NHS, we found ourselves in a situation where we have to learn and adjust on the go. Luckily, we had the support of many, many people. The whole country was really behind us to help us get through this. And well, in my experience, it was shortly after I finished my retraining when I got to Israel, we had our first opportunity to roll out the coronavirus vaccines. I'm sure your viewers probably heard that Israel was one of the first countries to roll it out extremely quickly to the entire population. And the way we did that was all of us EMTs, who wouldn't usually be qualified to give this specific sort of injection, were quickly trained into giving it. And we were sent out first to the care homes, to the high-risk populations. And I remember there was one period I did 3 consecutive shifts, each one of 14-hour day, going from care home to care home with a team, vaccinating every single person. And we could do 3 care homes in a day, each person get through hundreds of residents, so that in a few weeks' time they would hopefully be able to see their families. And it wasn't just us, it was also our youth volunteers who wouldn't be able to be qualified to do an invasive procedure such as an injection, but they came to help with the paperwork and the bureaucracy. We adapted the ambulances themselves with the help of the IDF, putting in screens to separate the driver cabin from the patient cabin, keeping our team safer, using new digital technologies so that we could screen patients from home and connect them to doctors to reduce stresses on the hospitals. We even digitalized a lot of our training, and we were already in the process of this, but we took the coronavirus as an unfortunate opportunity to further our digital training. And now when someone comes and wants to train as a medic with Magen David Adom, they already have access to almost all the materials online, so they can do revision, or they could start learning, get through the course quicker, get through the course better. They can come back to their materials after they've qualified and keep furthering their knowledge and keep training to do better and provide better care. So these are all things we've taken for the positive. We've learned a lot about how we could respond to this crisis and be ready for the next one, which we hope won't come soon. It was challenging. It was challenging as an instructor to expect to be teaching a class full of students one day and wake up and find actually it's going to be on Zoom. And to engage young children on Zoom, any teacher or any parent who had children at home during lockdown will know how difficult that is. But we adjusted and we looked for different ways, because the material we were teaching is so important as I think a lot of teachers across the UK are going to hate me right now, but as important as maths and English and science are to be teaching, it was really important that when we come and teach first aid, when we come and teach CPR, every single student is engaged with us and can take it home. So we did everything we could to engage them. Sometimes that meant instead of having 20 students in a class, we divided them up, 5 coming in each group. Whatever it needed, we adjusted, and we've learned a lot of valuable lessons from that, which we're now taking forward and using those things in our day-to-day practice.
Superb. And I know, for example, Mark, you've been out to Israel many times. You've seen the likes of Dror. Actually, you met Dror in Israel.
Dror in May, which is good. Yeah.
Which is good. So share with us your first-hand experience of the work being carried out by Israeli paramedics and medics belonging to MDA.
I've done several shifts on ambulances in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv with the paramedics, and that's been really interesting to see at first hand what they do and to spend time with them. I think one of my most abiding memories of that actually is the moment you turn up in an MDA uniform, which obviously you wear if you're on shift. You seem to get respect, and it didn't seem to matter I was English and all the rest of it. Nobody minded. I was just with MDA, and I think that says a lot about the reputation of the organisation out there. And then obviously once the paramedics start treating people, then you see the incredible professionalism and training kick into action. But I've been very fortunate too to see some of their training in Jerusalem ambulance stations, like the ambulance simulator, so people can practice before getting out on the road, which is quite useful. And also the mock-ups that you have in Jerusalem, which are really great. So, you go into a house, what looks like a house, and trained actually on site. But I think one thing I was really stunned by last time I saw this, and it's interesting for people to know, is that we were watching some paramedics training in Hebrew, and somebody said, do we have visitors watching? Because it was obviously a one-way window. And a person said, yes, they're all from England. And just like that, everybody switched into English. And I'm absolutely astonished, that there could be that switch straight over, and all the medical stuff was suddenly in English. And then the moment we left, it went back to Hebrew again. So I kind of came away with an even more impressed opinion of them, that they can do that, because obviously that then kicks into what you'll know about, with MDA being capable of treating anybody and everybody of any language with their translator systems and so on. It's fantastic, really.
Excellent. And Dror, just share with us what it takes to be a medic and a paramedic to work for MDA in Israel.
I think the first thing it takes is determination. You've got to know that this is what you want to do. And you've got to be ready to study hard. All of our courses are intense, whether it's the courses which staff come and do, whether, for my level of training, it's all day, every day for a number of weeks. And then you go home when you think you've had a full day and you do revision and homework. Or whether it's the volunteers who come and do an evening course over the course of 6 months. They come twice a week for 4 hours every week and study after they finish their day of work, and then they go back to their families. It's intense, so you've got to be determined. You've got to be calm. You've got to be able to maintain a calm composure, both externally, even sometimes inside you're panicking, but also internally, knowing that you're going to face difficult challenges, but you've been equipped with the tools to deal with them. And if you find yourself in a situation where it's beyond your capabilities, there is still something you can do. I always tell my students, if you find yourself with a patient and you're not sure what's happening, get them in the ambulance and get them to the hospital, and you're already along the right route, quite literally. So knowing that you always have something that you can do, and knowing that you always have the backup of other people. I spoke already about the donations and the prayers of people internationally, but within MDA, we have our medical supervision. We can always call in for advice and to consult if needed. But a lot of people look to us for that calming reassurance. And a lot of the most successful medics at MDA are the ones who are able to give that. The reason being, we come day in, day out to many of these tough scenes, but for the person or their family going through that emergency, for them this could be the worst day of their life or the most stressful period of their life. And it could be, and it's often happened to me, that I've been called to, for example, a baby who was choking. And that's a call that can rattle me. You know, I see it pop up on my tablet, I see the age, I see the title without even reading, and I've already flicked on the lights and sirens and we're going, and someone else can read it out on the rest. I don't need to wait and read. And we're trying to move all the Israeli traffic out the way, which isn't the easiest.
I can imagine that's not easy.
And your own heart is beating at 150 miles an hour. And just a second before you knock on the door and shout MDA ambulance, you've got to take a breath and smile. And as you walk in, show that everything's okay. And often everything will be okay. You know, a parent calling the ambulance for a choking baby sounds stressed, and we might not be able to get all the information out of them on the phone because they can't think straight in that stage. Yeah. But as soon as we come and we check the baby and actually everything's okay, or whatever they were choking on has come out, and thank God it's not the emergency we're waiting for, often the most important thing we can do is be supportive, is be calming, is hold a hand, is say, it's going to be okay, I'm here with you now, is explain what we're doing, specifically with children or with people who maybe not understand if we're talking in Hebrew between us. You can imagine if you've just been through a car accident, you're lying on the floor, and suddenly a group of Israelis are on top of you talking in Hebrew, that's quite intimidating. So sometimes it's as simple as bending down, taking the hand and saying, hi, my name's Dror, I'm a medic from MDA. You've been through a car accident, but I'm here to help you. We're going to get you treated. We're going to get you into hospital. Anything you need, you just let us know. And as soon as you say that in a calm composure, everything improves. It really, really does. And so I think the last key ingredient for an MDA medic or paramedic is to be calm.
Excellent. Well, I've had a few Israeli paramedics from MDA, but you're the first to actually give that very calm example of the personal qualities you need to bring calmness into a terrorism situation, an emergency situation, an accident situation. So appreciate you sharing that with us, Dror. And Mark, I mean, we in the UK have a tremendous respect for our NHS, our doctors, our nurses, our paramedics, our surgeons, and those who clean our hospitals and work in the hospitals. You know, we're so grateful for the work that they do. But we also have to see that there's something different about MDA in Israel, because we are not used. We have a few terrorism incidents, and we've had a few over the years, but not as many as Israel. So Israel has to contend with not only terrorist attacks, knifings, shootings, rocket and missile attacks, and they have to go straight into emergency situations if there is a terrorism incident. Share with us the courage and dedication and professionalism required to do that.
Well, I think, I mean, I will back you up. I have immense respect for the NHS, and obviously, sadly, I've had to use them quite a lot myself. But I think when you look at what MDA have to cope with, all those extra things you've just mentioned, then you are looking at another step forward, because my witnessing of MDA is they don't wait. They are straight in, and it's almost, and this is the wrong thing to say, Dror, but it almost comes across as we're not worried about our own safety. I know you are, but to an outsider, it looks like, let's just get this sorted, whatever happens to us. And I've heard some horrendous stories of how MDA paramedics have been treated over the years in terrorist situations, and sometimes, sadly, having to go and deal with a terrorist that's harmed one of their family. I remember meeting one person that had actually done that, and they were in Jerusalem, and there was the terrorist, there was a member of their family, the terrorist was the more ill. They had to go to them first and did. And I think I would find that really quite hard, I have to say. Despite being a Christian, I would find that very hard. And that's where you kind of just step back and think, these people are dealing with something a lot worse than what we have to deal with in this country.
Yeah. And Dror, can you just share any personal experiences of being involved with MDA and you're involved in a kind of terrorism incident? Because thankfully, there is not as much as they were, say, 20 years ago, and the situation regarding terrorism in Israel is so much better, but there's still that threat. There's that rocket missile threat, there is that terrorism threat, particularly now coming from inside Israel. So have you got experience you can share of what it's like? Because that's a huge challenge, dealing with a terrorism instance and then having to go into that situation, not knowing whether your own life is going to be at risk.
Unfortunately so. Unfortunately, I'll give you some stories and some examples. You're absolutely right, the situation has changed from from 20 years ago. Unfortunately, we had a recent reminder of what it was like 20 years ago with the double bombing that was in Jerusalem last week. Was it last week already? And these scenes do remind us. And as you said, there are some tragic scenes where our medics come face to face with danger. There was the terrorist attack in Bnei Barak, a small city near Tel Aviv, in March last year, I believe. And one of our medics received the call on his phone. We still didn't know what the exact situation was. He opened his front door, ran out to go and find patients, and found himself face to face with the gunman, and by some miracle was unharmed, and he ran back inside and radioed dispatch and passed more information along to the police. A couple of months after that, we had, or even a couple of weeks after that, we had the terrorist attack in the Dizengoff street in Tel Aviv, packed high street full of bars, hustle and bustle. I myself was on an ambulance shift in Tel Aviv that day. We got the call not exactly knowing what was going on. I had just finished wrapping up another call, and the instruction came over the radio: only who we've sent to the scene is going to the scene. Every other ambulance on shift, keep going to your regular calls because other people still need help. And I thought, okay, we're quite far away. We're not going to be sent there. A second later, the call appears. On my ambulance, I had 2 youth volunteers with me. Our youth volunteers are between 15 and 17 years old, and they come, they do shifts after school, and they're fabulous. But driving into the scene with youth volunteers is challenging. And of course, they stay in the ambulance where it's safe. We never let them get out. And there was the next day we had a debriefing for them to cope with the emotional trauma that may be involved. We drove a journey that Waze told me with the traffic would take 35 minutes. I don't want to tell you how quickly I managed to do it in. Of course, nice and safe, as you said. But on that note of safety, what we didn't realize as I was driving in was that we were driving right into the epicenter of the attacks. The information wasn't exactly clear where along Dizengoff Street this attack was, and I'd been sent to a specific patient, someone who had fallen over whilst running away from the shooting and had been injured. So I thought, okay, perfect. We're not going to the actual site itself. We're going a little bit further away. And with all the blockages and the one-way systems that are already there, from here to there, I drove through the epicenter. And in theory, my patient was about 25 meters to my left, and I wanted to stop my ambulance somewhere there, but I couldn't. There were too many people around, too many police officers needed to reach the scene. So I decided I was going to go straight on, turn left and left again around the one-way system, and try to stop somewhere where I wouldn't block access. It was a nice idea, but then when I turned left and left again, I found myself on a narrow street, and in front of me were 2 police cars. At one point, they both stopped their cars, put their handbrakes on, and ran out with their guns raised, as clearly they'd heard over their radios or had received some intel that they were near the terrorist, and they ran after a suspect. And suddenly my ambulance was stuck. We couldn't go over it anywhere. And luckily there were plenty of others on scene, and as I got to that position, I heard that all the other ambulances that were still being sent to the scene were being radioed to a specific point where the police were meeting us and directing us, but it was too late for us. We were stuck there. My youth volunteers were lying down on the ambulance, covering their heads with their hands for that extra level of safety. I left them inside, locked all the doors. I was with a protective vest and helmet, trying to see if we could find any patients nearby, anyone who needed our help. Luckily, there wasn't. I didn't treat any patients at that moment. And luckily also we had the motorbikes, who where I was stuck, they could get through. Many first responders, also people who lived in the area, didn't have a motorbike, didn't have a Kevlar jacket. They took their first aid kit or they took their first responder bag, and they came down and they looked for people to help. And so when the ambulances did arrive to the patients, there were people with them. They got them straight in and straight over to the hospitals. It's not easy. It wasn't easy to process. It was also around the corner from where I live in Tel Aviv. And in my flat, my flatmates were having a birthday party, which I couldn't make because I was on shift. And they locked down in the flat. So for all of my friends, we were living in this crazy scene of there's terrorism around. And suddenly, whilst everyone was talking about it for the weekend afterwards, I found that this was flashbacks to the scene that I was in. Hundreds, it was actually, the number was given 1,000 security personnel between the IDF, the police, local security guards, running around with guns in the air. And it was a trauma which, and like every terrorist attack, which many people found very difficult to cope with. A good friend of mine was one of the first on scene and treated a patient who unfortunately didn't make it. They performed CPR whilst transporting the patient to hospital, where they unfortunately declared death. And luckily we all had each other. and we had support from MDA itself to get through the emotional trauma, which all Israelis have.
Yeah. Well, Dror, thank you so much for sharing that story. That couldn't have been easy. So thank you. And it just gives us more respect and also highlights the need that we need to really keep MDA in our prayers. And we do, Mark, don't we? Because we know that we are called to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, that we are told to pray for Israel, but it's also important to pray for the vital work being done by MDA in Israel, particularly when we have a horrendous situation of a terrorism incident like Dror described it in Tel Aviv.
Yeah, absolutely. I think although we have had terrorist incidents here, we don't have anywhere near as many as Israel, obviously. And I think, you know, to be faced with what you're explaining, like those youth volunteers, really does make you think, you know, these folk do really need our prayers. And we know as believers that prayers make a vast difference. And, you know, if we can just stand back where we are and be able to cover them in prayer and let them get on with the work they can do actually on scene, then surely that's a good partnership to be in, I would say.
Absolutely. So let's have a look now at this very emotional and moving story known as Noam's story. Just be aware there's some graphic scenes in this video, but this shows you the remarkable work being done in MDA in Israel to actually save lives, and particularly this child's hand.
כי אני מניסיוני כל הזמן במגן דוד אדום, 17 שנה, 18 שנה כמעט. חוויתי הרבה חוויות עם ילדים, וזה, ילד זה יהיה... זה משהו אחר, זה לא כמו מבוגר. עדיין לא ראה את החיים. היינו קצת לחוצים, רוצים לדעת מה קורה.
זה אותו חבל. היינו בשטח. על הרצפה. אני בכלל עשיתי באוהל. לא סימפתי את זה, רק החזקתי את זה רגיל. לא ראיתי את זה שהוא נתפס.
And I hear the cry of a child. He was playing with a rope, and the rope caught in the wheel.
מה נעמה? איפה אתם נמצאים? יש לכם קרח? בן כמה הילד? יש טיפול נמרץ בדרך אליכם.
From the second of the amputation, it's a race against time. As time passes, the tissue dies. That's why we have a very small window of opportunity.
את האמת, אני לא רציתי לעלות, כי רציתי ללכת הביתה. ושמענו שזה ילד קטן, אמרתי, גם היו ממתינים לי בבית, אבל אמרתי אני אסע.
אוקיי, יש קטיעה חלקית. אוקיי, בסדר גמור, אנחנו כמה דקות בדרך אליכם.
The first responder took some picture of his hand and passed those pictures through MDA application.
We understood that every minute counts. We understood that he has to reach the specific hospital that has the ability to treat this kind of injury and reattach his fingers.
And we can pass those pictures through the application to the designated hospital, and they were actually prepared, the operation room.
It was an injury that can affect this kid's quality of life, can affect his future.
If the amputated fingers don't receive blood as soon as possible, the damage is irreversible.
לעשות קשקוש.
להציל חיים של ילד שישחק כדורגל, שיעשה כל מיני פעילויות עם החברים שלו. כאילו, אני מרגיש שאנחנו עושים את הכל.
I don't know how you can't be moved by that incredibly moving and powerful video produced by American friends of MDA, and particularly importance of bringing those child's fingers back to life so that he could fully enjoy his childhood. Shows you the dedication, the professionalism of the work of MDA. Dror, that was really an inspirational video, just showing how MDA paramedics helped to save that little child's fingers so they worked again, using Israel's latest high-tech technology, using the paramedics who fly in the helicopters as well to make sure that those fingers were saved on time. How much inspiration does it give you knowing that you're working for an organization that really does care about the citizens of Israel, whether they're Jews or whether they're Arabs or whether they're Christians or whether they're Muslims, all the population of Israel, sadly even including the life of terrorists as well?
Yeah, it is inspiring to see stories like this. Actually, I haven't seen this video before, and it brought something of a tear to my eye. Slightly choked up, but it was airing there. It was a great video to see, and it's a great example, in particular because this time the story had mostly a happy ending. They succeeded in saving the child's hand and his fingers, as opposed to some stories which don't have a happy ending, and many others which don't have an ending at all for us, because we take the patient to hospital and we pass them over to the doctors, and that's it. We don't know. And for us in the field, that's the day-to-day. Most cases, with rare exceptions, you don't know what's happening next. Apart from there was this one case. I was teaching first aid in a school. I took a group of 10 instructors, which is something we do regularly to the bigger schools. And at one point, a teacher came up to me and said, "You were the medic who treated my daughter after a car accident." And I didn't, and she started describing it. I was like, yes, I remember, and I remembered some small details. And she said, yes, that's absolutely right. And, and that was another example of a happy ending, which we don't always have. We don't always have that continuity. And on the subject of what you've said, we treat everyone, of course, as a Red Cross organization, as we're expected to, but not just as a Red Cross, as it's our own values, the values of each medic, and that's what we sign up for. It's not always easy with language barriers. It's not always easy with cultural barriers. These are things you need to know. For example, as an instructor, when I'm teaching new medics, I explain to them that in many situations, we don't want the patient to walk, we want them on the bed. For example, someone who's having a particular heart complication, we might not want to put more stress on their heart by them walking down all the stairs, so have a seat on our chair, we'll get you in the lift, we'll do everything for you. And similarly, when you get to the hospital, we're going to take you in, we're going to put you on the hospital bed, you don't have to do a thing. And some people culturally in the Middle East are very proud. A parent or grandparent who is in front of their family doesn't want to be wheeled in a chair, they want to walk, they want to be strong. And you have to know how to be culturally sensitive to these differences, and be able to give the best treatment to the patient. And if you don't know how to communicate correctly with different types of patients, you won't be able to do that. I had recently had a case where a child's grandparent didn't want me to take the child to the hospital. Now, of course, the grandparent wanted the best for his grandchild, but I found out later from the grandmother, it was to do with his own trauma in the past, that he didn't want to believe so much that there was something wrong. And the child was in a severe respiratory medical emergency, and I called out an intensive care ambulance, one of our MICUs, and they helped, and we did take the child to hospital. And the parents were also on scene, and the mother came with us. But it's these little differences when dealing with different populations. And I think one of the best tools and best ways we get to do this, and we learn to do this, is because within MDA, it's not just the people we treat, it's also our colleagues come from every walk of life within Israel. As an instructor, I've taught classes where you have people from age 18, the youngest you can become an EMT in Magen David Adom, through to retirees who have decided that they'd like to do some volunteering. And you have to know how to teach those different populations. And then I've got on the ambulance, and I've had to, with a national service volunteer who's 18 years old and a retired volunteer. And then I've been managing a resuscitation in the street under the Israeli sun, which is hot and it's difficult. And I had to take that into account. Okay, so my retiree volunteer, who's 75 years old, and may he, God willing, live many more years of good health, was doing compressions in the sun for a good couple of minutes, and he wanted to continue, and I had to say to him, take a break, have a drink, let this one swap you out, and then also the young person, you swap. So we had to balance all those things. Also, I think Magen David Adom is one of the greatest contributors to cohesion and inclusivity in Israeli society. It's the place where I've met, as a Jew, most of my Arab friends, which I may not have had the opportunity to do otherwise. And I think it's doing really, really great work in uniting the country and bringing us together, because if there's one purpose that everyone can get behind, it's saving a life. And Magen David Adom does that really, really well.
Excellent. The most important question I have to ask you, Dror, with 8 minutes left of the programme to go, is how does it personally feel to know that you saved a life? Because clearly that is what motivates you to be an MDA medic.
I can say there's honestly no feeling like it, and I don't know quite how to put it into words. You can imagine, and I know in England with paramedics it's the same thing, that the work is difficult, it's long shifts, the salary could be better, and it's just something that keeps you connected. Something that when I have a holiday, my phone is on. If there's a call nearby and dispatch takes me from home or from a holiday, to go and help someone. And it's slightly addictive, it's a slight rush, knowing that you have that opportunity. It's a real privilege, knowing that you have special skills that not everyone has, and that you can really give life, which is what God himself does for us. We are given life, and it's the greatest gift we have. Absolutely. And we look after it. And it's, in a way, it's a mission, it's ascending to go and give that on to others. And my personal greatest privilege at Magen David Adom, even greater than being a guest on television, is being an instructor and receiving messages from my students telling me about what they've done and the people they've saved. Wow. And I've taught back-to-back courses of medics who are now team leaders. And now some of the people who I taught on their medics course are now instructors, senior instructors teaching medics. And their students are now going out and saving lives. And it's this effect of generation after generation as of effect that we're having on individuals, on society, on the country, and on the future.
Amazing. And Mark, we know that within the medical profession there are a lot of Christian nurses and doctors that are very attracted to that very, very noble profession. But how can, say, Christian nurses or doctors or surgeons get behind and support the incredible work being done by MDA in Israel through Christian Friends of Magen David Adom?
I think by getting in touch with MDA and seeing what opportunities there are to just go and see the fantastic resources that they have. I mean, we kind of think we've done well with the NHS app, but compared to what you have at Magen David Adom with your app, it's just, well, it's light years ahead of what we have. And I think the more we can learn from Israel, the better we will be in our own NHS. I know we're cash-strapped, everybody is, but really, MDA has so much to offer us. And if nothing else, then I urge the Christian medical staff, please pray for them, because they are really our world leaders in medicine.
Excellent. And how can our viewers are touched by this programme today, Dawn? I can't see how you can't be touched by this programme and your experiences and the amazing work that you do in Israel. Get involved and support the work of Magen David Adom.
Firstly, I'd say keep doing what you're doing, and I'd say thank you for what you're doing. The prayers, the donations, the support. I've spoken all the show, and now I don't have any words to just say thank you enough. That's how much it means to us. As you said, visit the MDA website, mdauk.org. I think it's appearing on screens right now. And get in touch with us. Come and get involved in events here in the UK. If you're out in Israel, if you're coming to visit, get in touch with us too. We love having our supporters come to visit, come to get involved, whether it's to learn first aid in one of our courses, which we do in English as well as in Hebrew and Arabic and other languages, or whether it's to come along for a shift. I know many people have been involved in donating an ambulance or a motorbike and want to see that resource, and we do our best to make it happen. But even if it's just from here, your advocacy and helping your local community as well is incredibly important, and we're incredibly grateful for it. I'll add that we're also, as you said, so happy to help in every way we can, whether it's with our technology, our unfortunate expertise and experience in dealing with things like terrorist attacks. We do our best to help other communities learn and prepare to dealing with mass casualty incidents, for using technology to create rapid response systems like we have in Israel. And if you'd like to get involved in a way that we can help your community, we'd also be delighted to hear.
Yeah, because I know Mark, for example, they're with Christian Friends of Magen David Adom. There is a rep, and some of the big pro-Israel meetings. There's representatives from Christian Friends of Magen David Adom. They were the stand and just explaining and talking about the work of MDA. But for our viewers watching that really want to pray for MDA, pray for the work of Christian Friends of Magen David Adom, get involved in helping to save lives in Israel, because this is not a political organisation. This is Israel's national emergency service, which is vital for Israel's security, as well as the safety and well-being of its citizens, whether they're Jew or Arabs.
Yeah, I think I'd like to say to people who are watching this, just remember Jesus is a healer. The first ambulance in written record is Mark chapter 2, when 4 men took a man to Jesus to be healed. It's not much different today, except they go on wheels, not on foot. And Jesus was the key healer, and Dror's alluded to this, and it's one of the things I'm most passionate about with MDA. It's a peacekeeping mission in that sense of the word, because it is bringing communities together, and that's the thing to pray for, because with that common purpose of life-saving and medical care and just looking after each other, surely that has got to be one of the ways forward to us fulfilling God's will for us in this world.
Absolutely. And Dror, we just really focused on Israel in this program today. We ran out of time to discuss Israel's National Blood Center, which is incredible, which is a strategic asset in storing much needed blood supplies if Israel's ever involved in a major war. But I want to thank you personally for being on the program and the great work you do in Hebrew. Kol hakavod to you, and also to Mark as well from Christian Friends of Magen David Adom.
Thank you very much.
For being my special guest on the program. I want to thank you for watching this program at home, and you know how much this organisation of Magen David Adom means to me. My wife is a nurse, and so is my mother. They both have worked in and do work in the medical profession. But there's something different about Israel, because Israel is God's chosen land. They are God's chosen people. And as Christians, we are called to pray for the peace of Jerusalem and show that practical love. And one way of showing that amazing practical love is to get behind and support the work of Christian Friends of Magen David Adom in supporting Magen David Adom in Israel by saving lives, as they are Israel's national emergency service. So I want to thank you for watching this edition of the Middle East Report.